All right, everyone, it is 2 o'clock, so I am going to get started. Let me get my camera on. All right, hi, everyone. My name is Sarah, and this session is about a case study of how I use SharePoint, Power Automate, PowerApps, and Forms to build a speaker database. So really quickly, I'm going to introduce myself. I am currently a junior at the University of Maryland College Park, where I'm studying information science and operations management and business analytics. Some of the cool stuff that I've been up to is that I was an intern for the Northeastern Maryland Technical Council. I was also an intern for Smithsonian's Office of the CIO. Last summer, I was a junior fellow for the Library of Congress. And this upcoming summer, I'm going to be a solutions architect intern for Amazon. So yeah, some cool things I've been up to. Make sure you follow me on Twitter and LinkedIn. Both of them are at Sarah E. Patrick. You can keep up with the cool things I'm up to, especially with all these virtual conferences happening. Even if you're just from the Philly area, it doesn't matter. You can log into any of these virtual conferences. So go ahead, check me out, and I post other fun stuff too. Really quickly, I'm going to plug my volunteer work, which is with a group called TechGirlz. They're a nonprofit dedicated to creating that spark of interest for middle school girls to pursue tech. So they provide these awesome hands-on workshops. They provide the curriculum, the slide deck, everything you need to hold this workshop. And because everything's virtual right now, it's even easier to volunteer. You can join someone else's group, like maybe mine, that I do with my dad, to just help out and then eventually end up leading your own. So if you're interested in giving back and volunteering, check out techgirlz.org/volunteer. I have the link there, and they're really great organization. All right, to jump right into the talk, I'm talking about my experience with the Project Management Institute, and they are the world's largest not-for-profit professional membership association, obviously dedicated to project management. So the project that I'm working on today, is when back in summer 2018, wow, I can't believe it's 2021, so almost 3 years ago now. The Baltimore chapter specifically was holding events similar to these back when they were in person, where they would have a call for speakers, and speakers would sign up to speak at the event with different talk submissions, and they would do this annually. But they didn't really have a speaker database system. I'm going to show you it, but they basically had a simple Excel sheet type of situation, and it wasn't really great for what they wanted to have long term. They wanted to have a database to store the speaker's information so that returning speakers could log into an account and refer to that existing information instead of having to input it again and again. So I have here the main issues with this old version was that speakers had to resubmit their information for every event, and they weren't receiving proper updates on the event. So I was approached with, how can we fix this situation? So I'm going to take a quick look at what this old version looks like. If it loads up for us. It is old, so it might, all right, it just popped up on my other screen here. So let's bring this over here. Looks like it's just take a second to load. So pretty straightforward. We have all of our information about the upcoming event, which this one's old, but again, this is an old document. We have our name, email, the PMI member ID if they have one, and then other speaker information about themselves, and then also the talk that they are submitting to the event. So this looks great and straightforward. You would hit submit, and then you're already have a submission for speaking at the event. However, let's say you want to do another talk. You have multiple under your belt, so you want to submit multiple talks to this event. You would have to fill out this whole form again. And some of this information is redundant, such as your name, your email. Like, we should already have that stuff. Same with speaker bio. Those shouldn't be changing. Or let's say a year later you want to submit for the event again. Now you have to still put in all that information. So maybe you submitted a talk the previous year and you'll submit that one again. You still have to go fetch that data again from wherever you're storing it instead of them who should already have it. So you can see that there's an issue of redundancy and having the front end user having to repeatedly put in information. This might discourage them from even doing it again because it's a little bit of that extra work. So the goal of my project was to create a speaker database that will do multiple things. First, it wants to organize the information efficiently. So having all the speakers for one event in one place and having all the different talk options and then the approved talks, things like that, having it all organized with a proper database. Then we want to allow anyone to sign up anonymously. This was a huge one because PMI wanted to reach out to new potential speakers that haven't spoken at a PMI event in the past. So allowing them to initially sign up without having to do a sign-in or anything crazy was really important to them. Next, we wanted to store the speaker's information and talk details. This is a basic one that will solve that main problem that we don't want to have them re-input information over and over again. Once they put it in once, it's stored for them to fetch again. Lastly, we want them to be able to sign up for multiple events at a time. So first, I had to do some background research if I wanted to buy a certain model or maybe build it myself. So I looked at a few examples, such as Sessionize.com and how SharePoint Saturday events do their speaker database. And both were great platforms, and I learned a lot about them. And Sessionize specifically has the capability to purchase it, to host it yourself. But for PMI's budget and mine, we didn't want to spend any money, and if you saw, I have a bit of a SpongeBob theme. So Mr. Krabs just wanted to make sure we were saving that money, so we didn't want to spend it on buying a platform. So that's how we ended up building it instead. So that's how we get into these 4 technologies that we use to bring the speaker database together. First, it's SharePoint, PowerApps, PowerAutomate, and then Forms. So I'm going to be talking about each of these technologies, how I viewed each of them as a beginner because I had not used any of these before I worked on this project, and then the pros and cons of each one of future use that for me and for you if you're interested in using any of these technologies as well. So first, I'm going to give you an idea of what the end result of the database was like. So first, I'm acting as a front-end user, so an interested speaker for the event, and I'm going to fill out this form. This looks very similar to the Excel form that we saw before, asking all of my preliminary information. You can see specifically, I make sure that I'm filling out those fields indicated with an asterisk because those are required. The ones that are blank, I don't need to fill out now if not needed. I'll hit submit. And then I've let PMI know that I'm an interested speaker. Now, as a backend, I go to my SharePoint site for the PMI speaker database. I'm going to take a look at my site contents and look at all the different lists to organize my information. So we're going to see here a bunch of different lists. So first we have the different chapter sites, the locations for the events, the initial sign-up list to show that you're interested. These are the approved speakers, the submitted talks, those are the approved talks, and then a calendar for the events. So we're going to take a look at that sign-up list because this is what the speakers showed their initial interest. I'm showing you all the different columns that I have indicated in this list, but just blocking out the current speaker's information. Then if I scroll all the way to the bottom, you can see that me, the interested speaker, is already in the list because I filled out that form. So it's already into my SharePoint list. And then as a back-end admin looking to approve a speaker, I'm going to go to my speakers list. So remember, now I've filtered out who is approved to speak at my next event. I go to this list, I do quick edit. And then to add a new speaker, I'm going to scroll to the bottom here. And this drop-down looks at the speakers existing in the sign-up list because to be an approved speaker, you have to sign up first. So I indicate their name there. When I hit enter, all their corresponding information fills in automatically. And that's how we get an interested speaker to be approved for one of our events. So now it's in the SharePoint site. Now an approved speaker. Yay! All right, hopefully that gives you an idea. It was very surface level of what I was able to accomplish in that summer. So let's get to each of these technologies. Let me get this chat up to make sure if you have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat. So first, SharePoint. That is the browser-based collaboration and document management platform from Microsoft. Also, its content management system. I've found SharePoint used a lot as a company's intranet where they'll put up documents and everyone in the company is able to have access to them and also create their own intranet for other tasks they need to get done within their company. So first I'm going to show you how to create a list and the many, many different ways you can create a column, and then giving you some pros and cons of each one. So to start, I'm just at office.com and I go to SharePoint and I'm going to create a site, which is at the top there. And I'm going to see two options to create a team site or create a communication site. I found that communication site is more for general announcements and not really collaboration because we want this database to be able to interact with the speakers so that they can edit their information, update it. We definitely want this to be a team site. So very straightforward. We're going to have the site name, group email address, give it a description, privacy settings. I can add additional owners right here and members as well, but I can do that later as well. So now that my site's created, I'm going to add my first list. And my first small issue with SharePoint was that when I clicked on this gear to add a list, I don't see add a list. But really, it's just under add an app. It's apps and lists. So even though it doesn't explicitly say that, that's where they are. So SharePoint provides many templates of different apps and lists that you can create, which is really great if you know exactly what you want. Like we see the calendar here, a picture library, contacts, things like that. Since my project was experimental and I wasn't sure exactly what columns I wanted to include, I'm going to create a custom list so I can add whatever columns I feel is necessary. So I click that to create it and add a name. So now I'm just under my site contents and I'm going to click on the list so I can start adding my columns. The first way is the easiest. It even indicates how to add it there. Click on add column. It gives a drop down of the data type to be stored in that column. So that's where we'll click it here. And then similar to the past steps, we give it a name, description, change the type in case we click the wrong one, and even a default value if needed. So I'm just doing first name. That's pretty straightforward. Single line of text just fine. And I'm going to hit save to make sure it actually applies. So now I'm going to do add column again, but we're going to see some more options for data types and some more advanced settings. So I clicked on more on that drop down, and we can see some more options of those data types here. And I'll get into specifically two that I found very helpful for this database. This one will be last name. We can see some additional column settings as we scroll down, the first one being if that column requires information. So as we saw in the form with the asterisk that indicated it's required, that's the same thing but now in SharePoint. So I click yes because last name, that's important. And I'll show you how to change that for existing columns later. Another way to add a column is to drop down on an existing column and then under column settings, add a column, pick your data type, and you can add this here. I found this was helpful if you are looking to rearrange your columns as you're creating them. So you can see that this email one now appeared between first and last name because I did the drop down method. But let's say on the opposite end, you want to rearrange them after they're created. Luckily, you could drop down on a current column and then move left or right. So I just moved email to the right. Next, for custom columns, it has this title column as a default. So I did a drop down to edit the view, and I just unclicked it to have it hidden. And this is mainly because if you delete the title column, I've found to be issues. So I'll just hide it because I don't need any use for it. So I make sure to hit apply so that it actually saves. And then I also can add a column within Quick Edit. So here, very similar to the other way, just the plus sign, and then I can add a column there. This way, I think it's only easier if you're already in Quick Edit putting in a lot of information. So same setup here, gonna make sure I give the proper column name and type of data type. So here, you're going to see that when I click on multiple lines of text, it's going to refresh the page. You see that little blink? That's because it's loading new options for that specific data type. So you can see here, because I did multiple lines of text, now we're going to see the option for multiple lines of editing. That makes sense because that's not an option when it's only a single line of text. So when it does that little reload, myself as a beginner thought that something was happening wrong, but really it's just refreshing some new options. So this has all been in the modern version of SharePoint, but we still also have the classic version of SharePoint. So I'm going to go in here to get an overlook of our list settings. So I did that by clicking on classic SharePoint, lists, and then list settings. So now we can see here an overview of the columns in this list, and I can edit them really easily. So I'm going to go in, make sure that that title column is not required so that I don't really have to worry about it anymore. Make sure I hit OK to save it because it does not autosave. And then on the flip side, I'm going to make first name required because I want my speakers to fill out their first and last name. That's important. Make sure I hit OK. So I really love that this classic view gives me an overview of not only all the columns I have, but the types of data type it can hold, and also if they're required or not here. Still on the topic of creating columns, shocker, we can create a column in a classic SharePoint as well. That was just at the bottom there. Same options as before. The reason I talk about all these different ways to make a column is because when I was getting started with this, I found this overwhelming at first. I was like, why is there so many different ways to make a column? It's so extra. But really, it's just SharePoint giving you as many options as it can regarding what section you're at. So whether it's when you've just created the list, or if you're in classic view, or if you're under quick edit, different ways like that. So SharePoint's just trying to help you. I'm now creating a view, so I found this as a quick, easy way to rearrange your data for different purposes. In this case, I'm making an email view, so I'm going to have those emails be first in case that's how I want to send out my proper updates to the PMI speakers. But I don't need this to be that all the time, so just having a separate view for that email list. SharePoint also provides many other columns you can add automatically here. I particularly like this created column because it tells you the date and the time the item was made. So for my sign-up list, I'll know when someone signed up for the event. Now that I've applied that, I'm going to exit Classic Experience and take a look at the different views that I have. So up the right-hand corner, I have currently on the email view, I have all items, so that includes all of the columns I've ever included. In the back to email view, I have that email list first. Email column, excuse me. So now filling these columns with information. When I clicked on new, you can see this form shows up on the side, and that pesky title column is still there, but that's because we have to customize PowerApps, which will be the next demo. But for now, I'm going to fill this out to show you what it's like to fill in the information. Since I had the speaker bio be multiple lines of text, it creates this rich format editing for that section. And I'm going to hit save. So then it looks like I've signed up as an interested speaker within SharePoint. Inputting pre-existing information. So for me, since there's a lot of previous PMI speakers, this is the easiest way that I'd put them in here. I just copied and pasted it in through Quick Edit. Really quickly, I'm showing you that if I leave blank one of those required fields, SharePoint actually catches that with a little red warning sign. So I'm making sure that I fill that in. I exit Quick Edit to make sure it's all saved. So now we're going to look at column and list interaction. So these are the two special data types that I'm going to be talking about that I found particularly helpful for this database. So first will be the calculated data type. So in this example, I want to have full name. So maybe I need that field for something. Maybe I'm printing out name tags or something. And instead of having my front end user do first name, last name, and full name, because again, we want to make it as easy as possible for our front end users, I can calculate this myself. So I'm just appending the first name and last name together, those two columns. I'm using this with the formula given. And now, when I hit OK, that will be automatically filled in for us. So we're going to see when we scroll over, now those full names are already created for us. So that's how we get the columns to talk to each other. Now let's look at how the lists are interacting with each other. Here I've created the new list, the speaker list, and this is all of the approved speakers, as I've mentioned. And here I'm going to be using the lookup data type. So instead of having two different Excel sheets and having to go back and forth between the two of figuring out who's going to be approved for that specific event and whatever, I can actually look up the information already on that site. So I'm having the speaker list look at the sign up list, and then I can indicate which columns I want to be applied to that other list as well. So I'm check marking all of the columns I want to be included and hit OK. So now when I want to fill out information into this new list, instead of, like I said, having to copy back and forth, and that would be a pain for all of us, under Quick Edit, I can do a drop down, look at all of the speakers that had signed up, hit enter, all the corresponding information will fill in, and now that speaker is approved for the event. And it was pretty easy. All right. So pros and cons of SharePoint, it has a rich set of features. Again, even what I did just for this project was really not that much of what SharePoint is capable of. There's so much you can do to, my second point, create your own unique SharePoint intranet. Again, with me creating the database instead of buying it, I can create it to what I think was best for the organization and really make it my own. It enables cross-department collaboration. So again, with a company using SharePoint, all your documents and everything that you need can be on SharePoint, and everyone can have access to it and have collaboration. And then the user gets to decide on the best pricing model, which for me was free instead of having to buy a different platform instead. All right, so for some cons, because, you know, everything can't be perfect, the multitude of features can cause a mess. So as I mentioned, there's many different ways to create a column. And even though SharePoint's just trying to be helpful with whatever mode or section that you're in, it might be a bit overwhelming and a lot to take in and learn about. The next part is integration can require extra development effort. If I had gone back to my buy versus build research, I could have just bought a platform to do it for me and I would have been done. It wouldn't have been an internship. It would have been completed and I would have been good. But instead, I definitely had the extra effort of spending my summer to complete this. Next, if you do choose to do some further customizations, that might require some costs and investments, which would lead for the final build to be heavy, which Mr. Krabs would not be happy about. So we might want to avoid that. All right, so our next platform is PowerApps, and PowerApps is able to build and share robust apps across your organization and can integrate data from multiple sources and include workflows that automate tasks. So a really great and easy way to build an app quickly for your organization. So let's get into how I used it for this database, which wasn't exactly creating an app. I was customizing my form instead, which is what I kind of teased at in my last demo. So we can see here that PowerApps is already linked right in SharePoint. So it's meant for me to use them together. So I clicked on Customize Form because I want to work on that form that when I clicked New, it popped up with how I would fill in the information. So this is where I'm going to customize that. Here on that right-hand side, I can see the data source. So it's looking at my correct SharePoint list. Make sure my layout is the way I want it to, and also it looks at all the fields. It's similar to providing extra fields that SharePoint has too. So simply, if you want to delete a little area, one of those fields, I just clicked on it and clicked delete on my keyboard, or I can uncheck mark under the fields there to remove those fields as well. So I'm going to go through and start taking those out. The next part that I was experimenting with was how do I rearrange these fields? You can see me attempting to drag them and it's not working, which I thought was odd. But under the field section, I can drag and drop them and that will rearrange them. So interesting that I'm able to do it there, but not on the actual whole data form that I'm looking at. So there's 3 steps to deploy your Power App to SharePoint. You have to save it first, publish it to SharePoint. That's what I'm doing here now. And then when I go back to my SharePoint page, I want to make sure to refresh the page so that actually applies the changes. There's many times where I'd forget one of these steps and then it wouldn't apply, and I thought I broke it, but no worries. You just probably skip one of those steps. So now that I refresh the page, let's see how my form looks now. Now it's nice and updated and formatted to how I want it to be. So I'm going to sign up with my other account, being another interested speaker, and that's filled in nice. The next problem that I am demoing is, again, this was a very experimental project, so there's many times where I was adding and deleting columns, seeing what was best for this project. So I just quickly deleted one of the columns because let's say I didn't think it was helpful anymore. And when I go to fill out the form, that column is still there. I deleted the shortened version of the speaker bio, and it's still there. And you saw that when I tried to save it, I got an error. I even try it one more time, and I get another error. It doesn't quite tell me what's happening there. So I'm going to go back and fix this again. Go back through customizing it. You can see this is another way to get to PowerApps through SharePoint if I'm already opening the form. So I'm going to go back in, see if PowerApps can help me out with what the issue is. Has a little red X, and it tells me it has some invalid arguments. Not sure what that means. So I'm here to tell you that the point of this demo was that if you make changes in your SharePoint, it's not automatically going to apply to your PowerApps. So because I deleted the column under SharePoint, I have to delete the field in PowerApps as well. So now that I've deleted it, I'm going to check it again, and now it's gone, and I won't get any errors. Few errors gone. The next issue that I ran into was that data box that I was talking about on the right-hand side that told me the data source, the fields, all that good stuff. There's an option to exit out, so I did, but I wasn't sure how to get it back. So for the longest time, I kept hitting customize through SharePoint to get it back up again because I didn't know how to, because it was already automatically loaded through that. So I'm here to tell you how to do it. For the data sources, you have to hit on the View tab and then Data Sources. And then for the fields, you have to click on a existing data card, and then there's an option to click Edit Field. And that's how you get those parts up. The last small issue, which at the time when I created this demo, I thought it was a glitch, but really it was just another error on my end that I was unaware of. I had added a button to upload a picture. But as you can see, as I'm scrolling, the button is moving along with me. All the other field boxes are staying in place, but that button is moving. And I later found this out, again, after I created this demo, that you have to anchor your buttons, which to me was not intuitive because the other fields are already anchored in place. Why wouldn't a button be? But now you know you have to anchor your buttons so that it doesn't move while you're scrolling. All right, pros and cons of PowerApps. First, it easily creates apps within seconds for a very basic but workable app for your company. So a really great way to get started with some more apps for your organization. The pages and screens for navigation are easily modified. As you saw, I can show you how you can just delete them or add them back in, rearrange them through the fields box and all that good stuff. And again, I didn't even get into the changing colors, adding some more features to it, which is pretty easily modified as well. And these apps can be easily shared among the same domain users or unshared at any time. So really easy to deploy out to your organization, but maybe you need to make some changes, so you can just unshare it to make those changes and later share again. Some cons is that these apps might not be the similar experience that you are used to on your smartphone. So it's not as fast as like iOS or Android apps. You can't publish it to any of those app stores, so it's not for public use. It does depend greatly on internet connection, so again, might be slower than what you're used to. I just mentioned the issue I had with anchoring buttons. Not even an issue, it's just that you have to be aware that you have to do that. And lastly, and most important for this project, PowerApps does not have anonymous access. So again, one of PMI's goals was to reach out to new speakers by allowing them to anonymously sign up. And we couldn't do that with just the PowerApps. So the form that we created was great once a speaker was approved and once they were giving a login to the SharePoint site, but we still needed a method to get that initial reach out to new speakers. So that's where we turn to Forms. Forms is Microsoft's online survey creator, and it creates surveys and quizzes, and we can easily export the data to Excel. But in this case, I'll be having it in SharePoint, which I realize I'm getting ahead of myself because we use that with Power Automate. So first, let me show you what it's like to create the form. So I'm just through office.com, I just looked up forms, and I'm clicking on a new form here. And Forms was extremely easy to use. Very straightforward with where I fill in a title and a description. And it's so easy because it's simple. So it doesn't provide many options, but that makes it easy for beginner users to figure out. So we have 4 main choices here, as well as a couple more on the side there. I'm going to just start with some text. This is what I'm going to mirror my SharePoint columns. You can see I can add a subtitle, which is really a description for that question, and I can add restrictions as well if I'm expecting a certain answer. So if it's a number, I can give a restriction to what the answer would be. I'm going to turn that off. I can make this question required, so that gives the little asterisk to it, or an option for long answer. Another great thing that I love about Forms is that it's smart. It saw that I put in first name, so it gives suggestions for next questions, and luckily I want last name added. So I click on that and add selected, and even already made it required for me because it knows I made the first name required. I can add options, so I can add as many options as I want, name them whatever. I can add another option to allow your front end users to create their own, and also allow them to choose multiple options as well. This is a rating question, so you can do a different level of numbers and also change the symbol just from regular numbers to stars. You can easily duplicate questions, so maybe you have a list of questions that are similar and pretty long. You can easily just copy them to make multiple of them, or delete them with the trash can. You can also rearrange these with those arrows. Also forgot to mention, unlike SharePoint and PowerApps, Forms does autosave, so it's saving all these changes as I'm working through it. So I'm just finishing up my form here, again, to mirror the SharePoint columns, because for my PowerApps step, I want them to connect together. We can preview what the form will look like for both computer as well as mobile, which is really important because everyone's using their mobile device these days, aren't they? So I can make sure it looks good on both of them. All right. So let's go back and check out these settings. So remember, the most important part was we need to have that anonymous access. So when I click on the ellipsis and then settings, I'm going to change from the only people in the organization to respond, that anyone with a link can respond. So now we have that anonymous access that we were looking for. Anyone can fill out the form. Whew. Now we have a bunch of different sharing options. The first one is sending and collecting responses. So this is what's going to be sent out to my interested speakers. And Forms even provides different ways you can share it. First, with just the link, it creates a QR code for you to scan. You can embed it in your code or straight through email. The second sharing option here is sharing as a template. So maybe your coworker wants to use a similar format of questions that you have. You can share it like a template that way, or you can share to collaborate. So these are for your co-owners that also may need editing access to your form, and that's the link that you share for that. So I'm quickly going to show you here what it's like to work as a co-admin editing this form to show you that you get the same exact capabilities. So it's not like the main owner versus a co-owner has less editing access. You get the same thing. So I'm opening up a new window here to log into that. I'm signing in with my school account, go Terps. And then with that link, you can see that I have all the same editing capabilities, so I'm going to add all my other questions I think is necessary for this form so that it can be finalized and sent out to my interested speakers. So as someone that was a co-admin and it was sent to me, it's going to be under the shared with me tab versus if I created it, it's under my forms. So just keep that in mind for when you're creating it or working as a co-owner. Lastly, just like PowerApps, it's really easy to unshare the form. So clicking that trash can removes that specific link that you had sent out. So now when I go back to my co-admin here, I'm not going to have access to that form anymore. So maybe I'm just not working on that project anymore. And sure enough, it's gone. So yeah, Forms is really, really easy to use. I think probably the easiest for a beginner to get started with these Office 365 products. So really quickly, because I do want to make sure we're still on time, if you do want to try out a form, I feel like it's been definitely more normalized with the all the virtual conferences. But just in case you haven't, you can just use your smartphone, pull up your camera, and you just hover over the QR code. And I'm not sure if you can see it here, but it pops down with a tab at the top. And you just click on that and unlock your phone if it's locked. But it should take you right to a web page to fill out that form. So for me, the form is now up there. So if you want to, go ahead and try that out. If the QR code is not working for you, I also included this tiny URL link. It's tinyurl.com/csfeedback20. All right, I want to get right through it, so make sure we're still on time. The pros is that it's super easy to use, fast, responsive, and most importantly, it provides the anonymous access we needed to reach out to the interested speakers. So now we use that form to get those speakers interested, and once we see that they have a talk that's appropriate for the event, they are given a sign-in, and then everything else is done with SharePoint and PowerApps. Some cons is that because it's so easy, it's limited. So it only has questionnaires or quizzes. So it's really as much as you can do with it. It has limited features, so only those certain amount of questions could be created. I think someone had asked me if you can add images. And again, I was showing you the free version of Forms. There is a pro version, so that one may explore it more. And then unfortunately, I put editing with autosave as a con just because I had a situation that might have been with my dad where I was testing it with him and I meant for him to just fill it out, but instead I accidentally sent him the wrong link. I sent him the share to collaborate link and he deleted a bunch of my stuff on accident, so I can't blame him too much. But really, that's a note for me that I should be sharing the correct link, and because it edits with autosaved, it just saved all those changes. I couldn't undo them because he had made those changes. All right, last but not least, we have Power Automate. I know this name has been changed for a while now, but just in case you still think it's Flow, it's Power Automate now, even though it hosts flows. Anyway, Power Automate is a cloud-based software tool that allows users to create and automate workflows across either applications or within applications or services without the need of developer help. So this is really great to just automate some tasks for you without you even having to think about it. So in this case, I'm doing a pretty common one, which is when my form is filled out, put it in a SharePoint list. And I'm going to show you how I did that. So I'm under the Power Automate, and under New, I have the option to create from blank or create from template. So I talked about the templates from the SharePoint one and how I wanted to experiment with that. With this opposite case, I was doing a very common flow, and there are so many flows already created. So I just looked up forms, and sure enough, the first one that pops up is the flow that I want. Record form responses in SharePoint. And it went by it that it was used like 24,000 times. And I made this demo quite a bit ago, so it's been used many, many more times. So highly recommend looking at the templates for creating your flows, unless it's something really unique. So now I'm filling out the steps of the flow, which it's already set up for me because I'm using a template. I'm making sure it's looking at the correct form I created and also now the correct SharePoint list. So I just fetched the site address and the list name, and because I mirrored my form responses to match the SharePoint columns, I'm going to now match those in here with this dynamic content. So first name with first name, last name with last name, etc. You get the idea. So this is how it knows that you're matching the correct form response with what you want in your SharePoint list. Really quickly here, I make a note that be careful with the email that might be provided by Power Automate. Because my form, I indicated email. That's what that refers to, but forms also, Power Automate also provides this responders email, and that actually looks at if a user signs in to fill out the form. Because I made this form anonymous, that one doesn't do anything for me. It just says anonymous. So just keep that in mind if you do have email as a form answer. So I want to make sure that I'm choosing the correct one, not to responders email in this case. If you have them sign in, then that's totally fine. But in this case, since it's anonymous, I want the other one. So I'm going to finish filling those in. And then make sure I hit save. Sorry, I still say flow even though it's been Power Automate. Power Automate does not autosave, so I want to make sure I'm clicking save to keep all my changes. The next small issue that I had with Power Automate is that I'm not sure how to name this flow. Forms was really straightforward. That says untitled, but up here is where I name it. So I'm naming it PMI Speaker Demo, but not super intuitive that that's where you save it. And again, just showing you how important it is to autosave. So even though it looks like it's saved, because I clicked off of it and it applied, it didn't actually save. So didn't save my title, so I'm gonna have to go back in, rename it again, and actually hit save this time. So I'll go back and change that here. PMI Speaker Demo, no autosave. Forms is the only one here that autosaved. Make sure I save it, and now the name's actually applied. So now with sharing, pretty similar with forms that it's easy to share with another owner for editing access. I'm going to go here to type someone's name in. I tried doing my school account, but it's not within my organization. So in this case, I had to do my dad. I had to make sure he didn't mess up anything this time, but we should be good. So now that I've added him, he now has editing access to my flow. And when I go back to my tabs, it's actually now moved under team flows instead of just my flows, because now that multiple people are working on it, it's a team flow. So let's see how all of this works out together. I'm pretending to be multiple interested speakers signing up through the form. And now when I go back to my flow, I can see a run history of how many times it was filled out, if it succeeded or failed, and then how long it took as well. So because all these succeeded, we are good to go. But if there was an issue, this is where we would go into to really pinpoint where the error occurred. We can see all the good JSON of what was filled out and see all the steps of how everything was applied. But because everything was successful, we can go back into our list and now see our new 3 interested speakers. So that's how we got Power Automate to get forms to talk to SharePoint for us. And I don't even have to think about it. Every time an interested speaker fills out the form, it's already into my SharePoint list. All right, so pros and cons of Power Automate. You can do cross-site as well as cross-application workflows. It's really easy to set up. It has the reoccurrence, as I just said, every time that form is filled out, it's in my SharePoint list. And lastly, those templates. Definitely highly recommend checking out those templates. Super, super helpful, unless you're making a very abstract multiple step flow. It's probably already in there, so just take a look at them. Just a couple cons for this one. First was starting other flows. So I had a conversation at one past conference was, how can I have one of my existing flows be a trigger for a new flow? And we talked about it, and it can be done, but it's not that intuitive. So that's why it's under my cons list, especially as a beginner who wants to start implementing more workflows in my day-to-day tasks. That one's not super intuitive. Lastly, some of those predetermined fields issue. I named the one about the email versus responders email, but additionally, those predetermined fields greatly depend on the type of data we're expecting for that column. So the other issue I'm thinking of that I didn't get to demo was that when I was creating a ratings column under my SharePoint, I made it a number because a rating seems like a number. But then when I was under Power Automate creating the flow, it wouldn't show up the predetermined field. And I found out it was because the rating was actually expecting a choice instead, a choice of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So just be careful of what that data type is, and I guess you'll know that it's wrong if it does not show up under the predetermined fields, the dynamic content under the flow. All right, so again, this internship did happen 2 summers ago now. No, 3 summers ago. Oh my goodness, I'm losing track of time. Summer 2018. So there definitely have been changes since then that it actually was used, and speakers can sign in, see all their stored information, and then we use Power Automate to send out those updates about the events. So all of our big problems were solved by this database. Really quickly, I include this riddle if you did happen to fill out my form, because I did want to give you the answer. Why can't cats work on the computer? They get too distracted chasing the mouse around. So yeah, if that is all that I have for you, if you have any questions, definitely let me know. I'll be watching the chat for a couple more minutes. Also, you can contact me on Twitter or LinkedIn with at Sarah E. Patrick for both of them. I also have the QR code up here a few more times in case you still want to fill that out. Thank you so much for coming to my session today, and I hope you have a great rest of your day and hope you've had a great time at this conference so far today. Have a good one.